everyone. I know you are pumped about long division review. Please make sure you are either doing this on a paper, you could do this on a marker board and take a picture of each problem and then erase and redo it. Just remember you need to either attach it to the Google Doc that I have sent you, or some people just upload each individual picture. Whatever works best for you works for me. So we are going to cover long division that we've already learned, but I am going to show you how to divide by a decimal because that is something that we start learning in 6th grade but continue into 7th. So you will not see, this will not be the only time you see this, but it'll give you a heads up for next year. Okay, let's get started. So I wanted to start us off with a simple problem to review how long division works because it may have been a while since most of you have been using calculators. Just know that in 7th grade, you probably will not be using calculators at the beginning of the year. So let's review. When we are doing this, the first thing we think of is how many times can 3 go into 2? Well, 3 cannot go into 2, so that means I need to move over to the next value. So now we're looking at how many times will 3 go into 29? Well, if you think about your 3's, 3 times 9 is 27, so that'll be the closest. So we would put a 9 up here because 3 times 9 would give me 27. So we are taking 27 out of the 29, and we have 2 left over. And then we drop down our 7. Well, for the next one, we will look at how many times will 3 go into 27, which we know because we just solved it here, would be 9. And then we would subtract 27, and we have 0 left. We will not always be left with no remainder. Sometimes we are going to have a remainder. But remember, this number on top of your long division is your answer. So 99 would be my answer to this problem. Okay, let's try one with a remainder. So if I'm looking at this, I know I'm trying to figure out how many times will 4 go into 275. Well, if I'm looking at, well, how many times will 4 go into 27? I know that I have 4 times 7 is 28, but that's too much. So that means I need to go down to 4 times 6, which is 24. This is really important that you have your multiplication facts down because it makes life a lot easier in math class. So then we subtract that 24 because 4 times 6, we have 3 left over, and we drop the 5 down. And now we have 35. Because really what this is 275, and we took out 240, which leaves us with 35. So the next, what we're going to do is we're going to see how many times will 4 go into 35. Well, I can see I'm pretty close, so I can keep thinking about my numbers. 4 times 8 is 32. 4 times 9 is 36. That's too much, so it goes in there 8 times, which was 32, and I have a 3 remainder. We no longer write, like in elementary, you wrote, oh, that's R3. No, we do not do that anymore. We are in 6th grade. We have learned about fractions and decimals. So I'm going to make this a decimal. I prefer decimals. They're easy to work with. Sometimes a fraction is better, but we're going to do a decimal for this one. So you add your decimal point, add a 0 at the end. We're not adding a 0 up here at the top because that would mean it goes in there. It will go in 0 times. So we're going to drop the 0 here, and 4 goes into 30. I can see 7 times from my list I created, which was 28. We have 2 left over. We're going to add another 0 because we still have that remainder. You want to go until your remainder's done or the number repeats or a teacher has told you to round. And then if I think, oh, I know my 4 times 5 is 20, so I put 5 up here, and now we are done because now we have nothing left over. So the answer would be 68 and 75 hundredths. So remember, we are no longer writing remainders. Okay, on this one, we have 63 hundredths divided by 5. So the thing we need to remember when we have problems set up like this is the first one goes inside. Okay, because that's what we are dividing is the first number, because we read this as 63 hundredths divided by 5. So, and it's a great way to remember it is if you're first in line, you go in the classroom first. And we're going to divide that by 5. So we already have a decimal in this problem. It's right here. So the first thing I want you to do is go ahead and bring that straight up. So then we're going to be looking, well, how many times can 5 go into 0? 0. It can't go in there at all because you have nothing to go into. So then we put a 0 up, and you don't really have to subtract because 0 minus 0 is just 0. I mean, if you want to, feel free. So next I'm going to go over to the 6. How many times will 5 go into 6? Well, we know it goes in there one time. And then I'm going to subtract 5 from here. So we have 1 left over. We're going to drop down our 3. 5 goes into 13 2 times. That would be 10. We have 3 left over. We cannot write a remainder because we have a decimal already here, so my answer has to be a decimal. So we just add a 0 to the end and keep dividing. How many times will 5 go into 30? 6. And then we have no remainder, so now we are done. So the final answer would be 126 thousandths. So reminder, decimal, bring it straight up. Add zeros to the end until you get to a 0 remainder, or if it repeats, the numbers I've chosen for you will not repeat. They will get to a remainder pretty quickly. Okay, we have one more type of problem I want to review. Okay, this is something we have not gotten to in class yet, but it's super easy. So the difference with these problems is it's dividing by a decimal, and when you're dividing by a decimal, it complicates things. So what we do is we follow the rule that what I do to one side, I do to the other. So if we think of this as a fraction, whoops, I put my decimal in the wrong place. Let's try that again. As this, an equivalent form would be, well, if I move this decimal, which is multiplying it by 10, then I would also need to multiply this by 10, which will move the decimal. So that would become 228 divided by 6. So that is what we are going to do. The easiest way to remember this is if you move this decimal to make it a whole number, you've got to move this decimal the same amount of steps. So what we do is then we just are doing 228 divided by 6. 6 goes into 22 3 times, which is 18. 22 minus 18 is 4. Bring down the 8. 6 goes into 48 8 times with no remainder. And that is how you divide by a decimal, is you just move the decimal out. But you have to follow Miss Gillum's golden rule. If you change one thing, you must change the other. Let's do one more of these so you have a better understanding. Okay, in this problem, we have 2 9/10 divided by 2 hundredths. So what we are going to do, just like I said on the last one, we are going to get rid of that decimal. How many times do I have to move it? 1, 2 spaces. So if I move that 2 spaces, that means I also need to move this decimal 2 spaces. 1, 2. Well, what do I do with this blank spot? Well, we put zeros. So I'm going to rewrite the problem underneath. So now I have 290 divided by 2 because they're equivalent. What happened is we multiplied both of them by 100, so it made an equivalent form. So we are just going to divide. 2 will go into 2 one time. No remainder. 2 will go into 9 4 times, which is 8. You have 1 remainder. 2 will go into 10 5 times, and you have nothing left over. So your answer would be 145. And you could check this if you're like, I'm not sure about this. You could type 145 times 0 or 2 hundredths in the calculator, and you will see that it will get you 2 9/10. Okay, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm here to help. Have a great day.